Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be exploring the life and legacy of Anita Bryant.
Oh, yeah, Anita Bryant.
The name you might recognize from
The orange juice.
those catchy orange juice commercials.
Yeah.
But her story goes way beyond citrus, taking a sharp turn to activism in the 1970s.
Yeah, it's fascinating how, her journey from Miss Oklahoma to the face of Florida orange juice
Right.
almost foreshadows her later, more controversial role, in American culture.
Right. She was a pop star, a beauty queen, the epitome of wholesome Americana.
Totally.
She sold over 1 million records with hits like Paper Roses and In My Little Corner of the World,
Wow.
and even represented Florida orange juice for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
But how did this seemingly all-American figure become a symbol of the culture wars?
Well, in 1977, Dade County, Florida passed an ordinance that prohibited discrimination based on sexual orientation.
Yeah.
This was a huge step for LGBTQ+ rights, but it sparked a conservative backlash.
Right.
And Anita Bryant became the face of that opposition.
She led a campaign called Save Our Children, which, looking back,
Yeah.
seems almost ironic considering her granddaughter's coming out in 2021.
It is, yeah. It's
But back then,
old.
this campaign really tapped into existing fears and anxieties surrounding the gay rights movement.
Exactly. The campaign, which later had to be renamed to Protect America's Children due to legal action,
Oh, yeah.
relied heavily on inflammatory rhetoric.
I hadn't considered the impact of having to change the name of the campaign.
But it's kind of like a small
Yeah.
victory for the other side before the main event even started.
Totally.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if that small legal defeat added fuel to the fire in the movement.
So this campaign was successful in its initial goal.
Yeah,
The Dade County ordinance was repealed.
right.
But then came the backlash. A massive boycott of Florida orange juice, spearheaded by the gay community
Wow.
and supported by a number of celebrities.
And this boycott wasn't just a symbolic gesture.
Right.
It had real economic consequences. It demonstrated the growing political and economic clout of the LGBTQ+ community, marking a shift in the fight for equality.
It's amazing to think that this seemingly simple act of choosing a different beverage could have such a powerful impact.
It certainly shows the strength of collective action.
Yeah.
And for Bryant, the boycott hit hard.
Yeah.
She lost her lucrative contract with the Florida Citrus Commission and several other endorsements. She and her husband even filed for bankruptcy twice.
It's almost like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
She went from being America's sweetheart to a figure largely rejected by the mainstream, all because of her own actions. You have to wonder if she ever regretted her involvement in the Save Our Children campaign.
It's hard to say, but despite facing severe career setbacks and public criticism, Bryant never backed down from her beliefs.
Wow.
Decades later, she remained vocal in her opposition to LGBTQ+ rights, further cementing her legacy as a symbol of intolerance for many.
It's interesting to think about how different things might have been if this had all played out in the age of social media.
Oh, yeah.
Her message could have spread even faster, but the backlash could have been just as swift and even more intense.
Absolutely. Social media has a way of amplifying both support and opposition.
Right.
Would she have been able to withstand the scrutiny and criticism that comes with instant global communication?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating question to ponder.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back and look at the impact of the Save Our Children campaign itself.
Okay.
I mean, she achieved her initial goal of repealing the ordinance, but at what cost?
That's a great point. While the campaign might have seemed like a victory for Bryant and her supporters at the time,
Yeah.
it also energized the LGBTQ+ rights movement in a way that she probably never anticipated.
Right.
The backlash against her campaign helped galvanize activists and raise awareness about the fight for equality,
Yeah.
ultimately contributing to the progress we've seen since then.
Right.
Yeah, it's a classic example of what we often see with social movements.
Right.
A setback or a perceived victory for one side.
Can actually serve as a catalyst for the other side,
Right.
pushing them to organize, mobilize, and fight even harder.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
And in this case, the opposition faced by the LGBTQ+ community seemed to ignite a new level of determination and resilience.
Precisely. And this resilience was evident in the boycott,
Yeah.
in the protests, and in the growing visibility of LGBTQ+ individuals and their allies.
Right.
Bryant's campaign, in a way, backfired by bringing more attention to the issue and rallying support for the very cause she was trying to suppress.
It's a reminder that sometimes the loudest voices of opposition can inadvertently become the greatest catalysts for change.
Absolutely.
But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that I find really intriguing. The pieing incident.
Ah, yes, the infamous pie in the face. It's a moment that's become almost iconic, capturing the raw emotions and tensions of the time.
For those who are familiar, while Bryant was giving a press conference.
A protester walked up and smashed a pie in her face.
Oh, yeah.
It was caught on live television and instantly became a symbol of the outrage and resistance she was facing.
It's a fascinating example of how visual media and activism were becoming increasingly intertwined,
Right.
especially as technology evolved.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a local news story.
Right.
It was broadcast nationwide, instantly turning Bryant into a symbol,
Yeah.
though perhaps not the one she intended.
It's almost hard to imagine something like that happening today, not the pieing itself, but the way it instantly became this national sensation, this defining moment in her story.
I know, it's crazy.
But speaking of stories, I think it's time we circled back to Bryant's musical career.
Of course. Before she became synonymous with the anti-gay rights movement, she was a successful singer, known for her beautiful voice and wholesome image.
Yeah.
Her music was incredibly popular in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
And it's interesting to consider how her later activism completely overshadowed this earlier part of her life.
It's a reminder that public perception can be a fickle thing.
Sure can.
One moment you're America's sweetheart, the next you're a symbol of division and controversy.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder how she reconciled these two sides of herself, the pop star and the activist.
It's hard to say for sure,
Yeah.
but it's clear that her activism became the defining aspect of her public persona, for better or worse.
Right.
It's a reminder that our actions and the stands we take can have a profound impact on how we're remembered,
Yeah.
sometimes even eclipsing other aspects of our lives.
It makes me think about legacy, how we want to be remembered, and the impact we want to have on the world.
Yeah.
It's a complex thing, especially when you consider someone like Bryant, whose story is so multifaceted and evokes such strong emotions.
Absolutely. It challenges us to think critically about the figures we admire or condemn,
Right.
and to recognize that even those who hold views we strongly disagree with can have complex, nuanced lives.
It also raises the question of whether we can separate the art from the artist.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Can we appreciate Bryant's music, knowing her stance on LGBTQ+ rights?
Yeah,
Or does that knowledge inevitably taint our experience?
right.
It's something for each listener to decide.
It's a question that's relevant for so many artists and public figures, especially in today's world where personal beliefs and actions are often scrutinized and debated.
Yeah.
And speaking of today's world, let's imagine for a moment that Bryant's story was unfolding right now, in the age of social media.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
How do you think things might have played out differently?
That's a fascinating thought experiment.
Yeah,
On one hand, social media could have given her a much larger platform to spread her message.
right.
She was charismatic and knew how to connect with people. And in the age of Twitter and Facebook, she could have potentially built a massive following.
But on the other hand, social media could have also backfired spectacularly.
Exactly. The same platforms that could have amplified her message could have also been used to organize opposition, to debunk her claims, and to mobilize boycotts on an unprecedented scale.
Yeah.
Imagine the instant backlash, the viral tweets,
Oh, yeah.
the critical think pieces, and the memes.
It's hard to imagine her navigating that landscape unscathed.
Yeah.
The intensity and speed of online discourse can be overwhelming.
Right.
And it's unlikely that her campaign would have escaped widespread scrutiny and criticism.
It's almost like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Social media can give you a powerful voice,
Yeah.
but it can also expose you to a level of criticism and accountability that wasn't possible in the past.
It's a reminder that the rules of engagement have changed, and those who seek to influence public opinion need to be prepared for a much more dynamic and unpredictable landscape.
But beyond the hypothetical scenarios, what do you think is the most enduring takeaway from Bryant's story for us today?
I think it's a reminder that the fight for LGBTQ+ rights is an ongoing process.
Right.
While we've made significant progress since the 1970s,
Yeah.
there are still those who hold views similar to Bryant's,
Right.
and the fight for equality and acceptance continues.
Right. It's a powerful reminder that we can't take our rights for granted, and that we need to remain vigilant in defending and expanding those rights for everyone.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that even individuals who hold views we find abhorrent can have a complex impact on history,
Right.
both positive and negative.
Yeah.
In Bryant's case, she inadvertently helped galvanize the very movement she was trying to suppress.
Yeah.
And her story continues to spark conversations about social justice and the power of collective action.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how her story continues to resonate even decades later. And it's not just about her activism.
Right.
It's about the broader context, the evolving nature of social movements,
Yeah.
the power of public opinion, and the lasting impact of our choices.
It's like her story encapsulates a pivotal moment in American history, a
Right.
time when the nation was grappling with profound social and cultural changes.
Yeah.
And her role in that moment, though controversial, is undeniably significant.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder how she might have navigated the world today in an era where social media can amplify voices, but also intensify scrutiny and criticism.
Right. It's really interesting to consider how someone with her strong convictions and ability to mobilize people
Yes.
might have fared in the age of instant communication and viral trends.
Right.
Would she have thrived in that environment, or would she have faced even greater challenges?
Hard to say.
Yeah.
But one thing's for certain, her story offers valuable insights into the dynamics of social change,
Right.
the power of collective action, and the enduring importance of fighting for what you believe in, even in the face of adversity.
Speaking of fighting for what you believe in, it's worth noting that despite the setbacks she faced, Bryant never wavered in her convictions.
Right.
Even after losing her orange juice contract and facing widespread criticism, she continued to advocate for her beliefs, founding Anita Bryant Ministries International in 2005.
It's almost as if the backlash she experienced only strengthened her resolve, reinforcing her sense of purpose and fueling her continued involvement in activism and ministry work.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the nature of belief
Yeah.
and how it can shape our actions, even in the face of opposition.
It's a reminder that people are complex and their motivations are rarely simple.
Right.
Even those we might disagree with can have deep-seated beliefs that drive their actions.
Yeah.
And understanding those beliefs can be key to engaging in meaningful dialogue and finding common ground.
That's a really important point. Understanding, not necessarily agreeing with, but understanding where someone is coming from.
Yeah.
But let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the evolution of social movements.
Okay.
How do you think Bryant's story reflects the changing landscape of activism, particularly in the context of LGBTQ+ rights?
Well, Bryant's campaign and the subsequent backlash against it really highlight a pivotal moment in the LGBTQ+ rights movement.
Right.
It was a time when the movement was gaining momentum,
Uh-huh.
but also facing fierce opposition. The Save Our Children campaign, while ultimately unsuccessful in its broader goal, demonstrated the power of fear-mongering and misinformation tactics that are unfortunately still used today.
It's a sobering reminder that progress isn't always linear,
Right.
and that even in the face of significant advances, there can be setbacks and resistance.
Exactly. And Bryant's story also highlights the evolving tactics used by both sides of the movement. The boycott of Florida orange juice was a powerful example of economic activism, demonstrating the growing influence of the LGBTQ+ community and its allies.
Wise.
Today, with the rise of social media, we see even more diverse and sophisticated forms of activism, from online campaigns and viral hashtags
Right.
to organized protests and boycotts.
It's almost like the playbook for social change has been rewritten with new tools and strategies constantly emerging.
Yeah.
But amidst all these changes, I think one thing remains constant:
It's hot.
the importance of raising awareness, mobilizing communities, and challenging injustice wherever we see it.
I couldn't agree more. And Bryant's story, for all its complexity and controversy, serves as a powerful reminder of the stakes involved and the courage it takes to fight for equality and justice.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the highs and lows of Anita Bryant's life and legacy.
We have.
It's been a deep dive into a story that's both fascinating and thought-provoking, reminding us of the complexities of history, the power of belief, and the enduring fight for LGBTQ+ rights.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you, and I hope our listeners have found it as insightful and engaging as we have.
I hope so too. And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to delve deeper into Anita Bryant's story, to listen to her music, and to reflect on the ways in which her journey intersects with the broader narrative of American history and the ongoing fight for social justice. Thanks for joining us.